Hello everyone and welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I'm everyone's favorite Ravenclaw prefect, Dylan Randazzo, and I'm here to give you my review for Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. This is part of my 2011 retrospective series. If you've been paying attention here on the channel and on my Letterboxd, Dylan_Randazzo, you've seen that I've been doing a lot of reviews for movies that came out 10 years ago, and I figured I would do a review on my favorite movie of 2011 being Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, but there are a lot of other reviews I've done for Bridesmaids, Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, and coming tomorrow I will be doing an episode of Picture This with co-host Chad Webb, where we'll be talking about all the nominations for Best Picture for 2011. So there's a lot of stuff both on my Letterboxd and here on the channel if you're interested in more reviews about 2011. But let's dive right into the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Before I get to the review, I did want to tell you about the Harry Potter store in New York City. If you are in the area or are coming from out of town and happen to be in New York City and love Harry Potter, I highly recommend this store. The store is an amazing new store with a bunch of amazing memorabilia, wands, clothing, including all the books. You can buy other kinds of books, replica props from the movie, merchandise for the store itself, merchandise for each single house itself. Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, it's all there. That's where I got this shirt. That's where I got this wand I actually want to show you. I am a Ravenclaw. I was sorted into Ravenclaw by my acting teacher in high school. He sorted us all into houses using the Pottermore test, and I did end up scoring the highest percentage Ravenclaw in the class, so I became the prefect of Ravenclaw. So I figured I would get this Ravenclaw wand. It actually has a raven right there carved into it. It is a beautiful wand. They have wands for all the different houses, but this is one of the most beautiful things I own now. To walk around and just see all the beautiful things that made our childhood so special with this franchise, these movies, these books, just being able to walk through it and experiencing it, it is really, really awesome. And I do recommend ending the day with a nice cold glass of butterbeer. It is one of the most delicious drinks you'll ever have. Now for the review of the film. As I mentioned, this is my favorite film of 2011. This is actually the first review I ever wrote on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's such a short review, but I'm going to read it right now because this is a 13-year-old Dylan speaking about Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Dylan, 13-year-old Dylan, said, "This was by far the most outstanding and most breathtaking Harry Potter film I've ever seen. Alan Rickman's performance as Snape will surely win an Oscar. However, I'm sure Ralph Fiennes, Emma Watson, Rupert Grint, and Daniel Radcliffe are all also worthy of a nominee. This series has followed me through my childhood, and now I'm sad to see it end. However, now that Ginny and Harry's children are attending Hogwarts, no one knows what will come next. I can't wait to find out. Thank you, Harry Potter, for the great gift you gave me, and thanks for making my childhood an excellent one." For someone who would eventually go on to want to pursue criticism and theater simultaneously for a career, I'm pretty impressed that 13-year-old me was able to punch out that paragraph about a film that he loved and still loves to this day. I really, really loved the film back then, and I still love it now. One of the hardest things to do with any franchise is end it in a satisfying way for everyone. Finding satisfying ends for the characters, both the heroes and the villains, seeing the villains get their comeuppance, seeing the heroes succeed to win the day, and ending on a note where we know the characters are going to be successful on their journey forward, whatever that might be. It's interesting in my review when I was 13 that I did mention that I can't wait to find out what comes next, and interestingly enough, they did make a sequel to these 7 movies, or to these 8 movies, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which is a play. It's a really interesting play. I know some people love it, some people hate it, but I do think this is a very fitting conclusion, whether or not you take the play into account, whether or not you take the Fantastic Beasts films, which are technically prequels and set in a whole other part of the world, whether you take those into account. This does feel like a very epic and satisfying finale. The most questionable part about this movie heading in was, how are they going to make it seem like its own movie when it is the second half of this book behind me? How are they going to make the second half of a book feel like its own film? And I think this film from the start really does set it up as its own film. It doesn't jump right into the action. It does kind of allow for the characters to kind of breathe and take a moment, coming off of all the events of the last film. We open with, of course, the grave of Dobby. We open with a shot of Snape as the new headmaster of Hogwarts. It's kind of setting up the exposition that we already got a lot out of in the last film, but just kind of reintroducing us to what is currently going on in the timeline without jumping into, okay, we got to get all the Horcruxes, we're back in this, we got to go right to the battle. It takes its time. The first few scenes of this film really take their time to just kind of reestablish this world, which I really like, and does make this film feel very much its own film rather than just a continuation of the last one. Then we do get into this really amazing Gringotts sequence with really amazing homages to other films. There's that scene where the chandelier begins to shake oh so suddenly. It's almost reminiscent of Jurassic Park, the way Steven Spielberg zoomed in on that water glass and you see the water in the glass shake just a tad bit, just so you know the dinosaur is approaching. There's a very similar use of that device here with the chandelier. You see the chandelier move slightly, and then everyone else starts looking at one another, and then this giant dragon just bursts out of Gringotts. That whole sequence, even inside the vault itself, is just so interesting. It feels like its own roller coaster ride. I'm not surprised that there is a ride about escaping from Gringotts at Universal Orlando at the Wizarding World, because this does feel very much like that theme park thrill that you want to get from Harry Potter. This film is a very dark film. It deals with some very, very dark and dreary and really emotional moments, but this part of the film reminds us why we fell in love with the franchise from the start, and that is because of the whimsy, because of the magic. Especially in this sequence, we really focus on the fun spirit of adventure that we've grown to love with these films. Harry, Ron, and Hermione finally make their way to Hogwarts, where they're greeted by Neville. I've always felt that this film has really three central figures at the forefront, and that is Harry himself, obviously, and then of course Professor Snape, who has some really, really important, vital scenes in this film, and then Neville himself. I think Neville is a character that has kind of been under the radar for a lot of these films, but in this film especially, he really gets to shine, and I think him being the first one to greet Harry, Ron, and Hermione into Hogwarts almost shows Neville in this new light. He is now the leader. He is kind of the representative, the ambassador of these students. He's the one to greet Harry and to welcome him into Hogwarts, to catch him up on what's been going on. Neville really does take a really big leadership role in this film, which is nice to see because I've always resonated with Neville. Harry was always an underdog, but he had this level of fame because he was his father's and mother's son, but Neville really didn't have the fame. He just had that underdog nature, just like Harry, but without the fame, and I've always been drawn to that, and I think Neville himself has a really nice arc, so to see him greet Harry, Ron, and Hermione here is really nice. We then get this really great showdown with Snape and McGonagall, and this really amazing moment where Harry says, "How dare you stand where he stood?"
How dare you stand where he stood?
But obviously we'll find out later that Snape actually does care for Harry. He does care for Dumbledore, and he had to do what he did to really help Harry in the grand scheme of things, but Harry doesn't know that, and it's a really emotional moment looking back at this film 10 years later and just seeing how powerful that one line of dialogue is in the context of this pretty entertaining fight.
Tell them how it happened that night. Tell them how you looked him in the eye. A man who trusted you and killed him.
Snape escapes, and then McGonagall mans all the boundaries, and this is where we get one of the most stunning musical compositions from Alexandre Desplat, Statues. It is my favorite track on the film. It's a really stunning, noble piece of music that really sets up this brewing of this battle that's about to ensue. It really feels like everyone is taking command and everyone is standing together nice and strong, and this musical composition really enforces that and really sets the tone for what this battle is going to be. I also appreciate how the lighting here isn't completely dark. A lot of this film takes place at night, but they do a good enough job illuminating the sky with these bluish hues. I think of Game of Thrones, and I love Game of Thrones, but the whole episode where they finally fight the Night King, a lot of the lighting in that was hard to see everything. You couldn't really make out things unless the dragons were breathing fire and everything was fully lit. Here, I feel like the lighting is really, really nice to where you get the sense that it's nighttime, but you can still see everything going on. It reminds me of the Two Towers Battle of Helm's Deep. It's very, very well done, very well lit, and I really appreciated that from a design and cinematography standpoint. Everyone splits up to go find the other Horcruxes. Of course, you have to find the snake. They have to find the diadem for Ravenclaw. This is where Ron and Hermione, of course, share the kiss that everyone had been waiting for. It is a really, really epic kiss. It is my favorite kiss in this whole franchise, especially coming off of that awkward Harry and Hermione kiss from Deathly Hallows Part 1. It's nice to have this kiss with Ron and Hermione. They're finally united, they're finally in love, and it's this beautiful moment that they get to share after they've already accomplished their main goal in destroying one of the Horcruxes. We do get this face-off between Harry and Draco, but actually we see that Harry is going to save Draco, which ends up being a very vital piece of information later on. It's always great to see Harry and Draco have another another face-off. You know, their characters have gone through so much together, and by now Draco has really established himself as more of a full-on villain rather than this misunderstood anti-hero. And I think this moment is really nice because, you know, we do see Draco eventually need to get his ass saved by Harry, Ron, and Hermione. It actually gives one of the best Ron lines, which is, "If we die for them, Harry, I'm going to kill you."
If we die for them, Harry, I'm going to kill you!
Which is funny because if they die for them, he'd be dead, so he wouldn't be able to kill Harry. Either way, it's a very Ron line, it's a very funny line, and it's a line that always makes me chuckle 10 years later. After every Horcrux is destroyed, there is this moment, almost this chemistry between Harry and Voldemort, this unspoken connection where Harry and Voldemort can kind of feel each other's pain. Later we know that Harry is in fact a Horcrux himself, and that is why he is able to feel Voldemort's pain. He has some of Voldemort's soul in him, but it's really nice to see how this is framed. This use of device where you can kind of hear this Voldemort whisper that almost, you know, kind of taps into your earbuds and makes you kind of, you know, tense up and squirm a little because it's so haunting and chilling.
If you do not do this, I shall kill every last man.
There's really great close-up work in this. I just think this is a really well-shot movie. Everything is so well composed, especially these close-ups, especially these connections with characters who aren't even in the same place. It reminded me of Star Wars, what they've done with some of the conversations between Rey and Kylo Ren. This idea of not needing to be there, but feeling each other's presence and feeling that almost supernatural element between the two of you. Then we get to one of the most beautiful half hours of cinema that I've ever seen. We get this really, really scary, haunting boat scene death with Snape, where he gets eaten by the snake after Voldemort slits his throat with a wand, basically saying, well, you killed Dumbledore. In order to get the Elder Wand, I need to kill you. We later find out, of course, this is not the case, but it only leads to one of the most emotional moments when Snape's tear reveals a whole story where they go back into Snape's childhood, and Harry realizes that Snape had his back this whole time. Snape loved his mother, and he saw the greatness in Harry that he saw in his mother, and he saw some of the things he didn't like in Harry's father in Harry as well, which is why he was tough on him. He was tough on him to make him better, and I think this is a really important moment because Snape is such a mysterious character throughout the whole franchise. To finally see this moment and understand his motives, but after he's already died, so we can just appreciate it and value it even more and understand just how much of a sacrifice Snape made in all these films, but especially this film. It is just such a beautiful, touching moment that I think is going to go down as one of the greatest montages in cinema history. And like I said in my review when I was 13 years old, Alan Rickman's performance in this film is absolutely Oscar worthy. I would have given it Best Supporting Actor because it does the job of a supporting actor perfectly. He is not the main character of this film, but in his one moment, he is able to provide some of the most emotional and beautiful moments in this whole series, in this whole franchise, in any franchise ever. I think his scenes in this film truly deserve some sort of merit, some sort of gold.
He intends to hunt them down now, to kill them. Hide her. Hide them all. I beg you.
After this Snape scene, we get to see all the other casualties. We unfortunately see Lavender Brown has died. We see Fred Weasley has given his life in the Battle of Hogwarts. We see Lupin and Tonks laying next to each other, obviously dead. It's a very sorrowful moment because this is right before the big climax. You know, this is before we get to Harry confronting Voldemort in the forest, you know, and we can feel exactly how much sacrifice these characters have made, and Harry gets to experience and almost question, was this all worth it to see all these people die for me? And there's a very profound level of depth that this film goes into, and it doesn't even do much with words. It's all visual. It's just Harry walking down and seeing all his comrades, but honestly, the fact that there's no dialogue here almost makes the moment that much more impactful. Through Snape's message, Harry realizes that he is in fact the last Horcrux, and he must go to the forest to sacrifice himself because in order to kill Voldemort, you have to kill Harry first. And it is one of the scariest moments as a kid watching this and seeing, is the main character going to die? Yeah, I read it in the books, but seeing it on screen, it's just hard to fathom the main character of your story dying. Of course, he has the resurrection stone that he gets in the Golden Snitch after talking to ghosts of his past. And then he has this great sequence with Dumbledore in this very white, dreamlike limbo state where Dumbledore basically tells him the whole history of Harry and why he is a Horcrux and how he can return with the resurrection stone, finish his goal of ending and destroying Voldemort and his army once and for all. This allows Michael Gambon to get a nice performance out of this film. Dumbledore died a few films ago, but it's nice to give him an opportunity to have a scene with Harry because he really really is such an important figure to Harry in this whole franchise, and to have a film where he is not represented and he doesn't get a final last moment with Harry would feel unfitting. So I'm glad they kept this scene in there, and it's a really nice scene. It also gives us a great glimpse of that Voldemort fetus. It's one of the most disgusting uses of effects work, but I love it. It's a deliciously gross effect that I think really does make you squirm almost as much as Voldemort's whispering himself. Narcissa Malfoy then approaches Harry to find out if Harry is really alive. Once she finds out that he is alive, she asks if Draco is alive. He nods yes. Of course, this is the callback to earlier when he saved Draco. Again, everything comes full circle. Little details earlier on come back to make very important game-changing moves later on in the film. Of course, before Harry reveals that he is alive to everyone else, Neville steps forward and confronts Voldemort with this really compelling speech. As I said, Neville's a great character. I think they really give him a great set of scenes in this final film, and this monologue is my favorite monologue in the whole film.
But you will, because you're wrong. Harry's heart did beat for us. For all of us.
Draco gives Voldemort one of the most uncomfortable hugs I've ever seen.
Well done.
And then Harry reveals himself and starts the final showdown with Voldemort. Everyone's in amazement that Harry's alive, but everyone has to get back to work. Molly Weasley takes care of Bellatrix.
Not my daughter, you bitch!
Neville triumphantly cuts the head off the snake. And then Harry is able to kill Voldemort in my favorite version of Han and Greedo. Everyone always asks, who shot first? Did Han shoot first? Did Greedo shoot first? Here it is very clear that Harry shoots his magic out of his wand first, and that is what ultimately ends up taking over Voldemort's power, destroying Voldemort and making him crumble into a bunch of ash. I love this effect of him fading into dust. It's not like Avengers where it's quite literally dust. It's almost like little fragments of like burning paper almost is what the texture of his skin looks like as he's crippling away and crumbling away. It's really beautiful effects work, even for a death of a hated character. It's still such a fitting and epic way to go. And I love how they framed it, and I loved how they conveyed it on the screen with the use of visual effects. We get a little bit of the debrief of the battle. We get to see Hagrid and Harry share this last hug. It's really fitting that the last adult that Harry interacts with in this film is Hagrid, because Hagrid was kind of the first one to bring Harry into this whole thing. We see Harry just destroy the Elder Wand and throw it into the water, which I, of course, think is just such a great choice. Harry wants to finally move forward and live his own life and just walk his own path. He doesn't want to be haunted of the ghosts of his past, and the Elder Wand to him is just a wand. Just like in The Last Jedi, it's just a lightsaber. Luke Skywalker throws it over his shoulder. I love that moment, and I love this moment here because it's showing that he's willing to start this new chapter and move forward now that he's accomplished his true goal. His true goal was never to have the Elder Wand. It was just to defeat Voldemort, and now that he did, he doesn't need the Elder Wand, and he throws it in the water so no one else can get their hands on it. Then we get an epilogue. Sure, it's a little weird that we see these characters as adults, but would it have really been satisfying if they had just older actors playing these characters? No. Of course we needed this original cast, even if the old age makeup doesn't make them seem that much older. I think it's very fitting that these 4 characters and a snippet of Draco, so 5 characters, are shown here at this end with their kids, sending their kids off to Hogwarts. It is a very touching finale. A lot of the story merits are due to the book just making a really nice story, but I really have to give director David Yates and the whole filmmaking crew props on just bringing it to life in such a satisfying way. The tone conveyed through the score, the different shot compositions, the use of visual effects, it just feels so well constructed. Each scene is just so fitting to both the book and to the characters on screen. It really checks all the boxes that anyone could ever want from this finale. Like I said, pulling off a finale for a beloved franchise is hard. Even if a lot of the work is done for you in the book, you still have to bring it to life. You still have to give a satisfying conclusion. You have to pick and choose what to cut out, what to include, what stories to rearrange and change, and I think they adapted it wonderfully. It is probably the most emotional film of all the Harry Potter films, and I definitely feel it, but it doesn't, shy away from some of the humor. Like I said, the Gringotts sequence provides a lot of the great whimsy and magic that we've come to love in the adventurous spirit and nature of Harry Potter. I just think it really hits all the marks. And I think it is a film that still holds up to this day, and I don't foresee it ever not holding up. And I think this is a film I will always cherish near and dear to my heart as well. If you love Harry Potter, I would love to hear your thoughts on this movie and all the Harry Potter movies and why Harry Potter is so important to you. Please like, please comment, please subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'm extending my retrospective a whole month because there are so many other movies from 2011 that I want to get to watch. You know, there's so many little small films that came out, even some big films that I still haven't seen that I really want to see, really want to review, really want to take the time and watch. You know, 1 month is just not enough to watch so many great films in 1 year, so I'm extending it to July. So at the end of July, you will get my final top 10 of 2011, and spoiler alert, this film is definitely on the list. It's pretty high on the list. Will it be number one after I watch some more 2011 films? You'll have to find out. Tomorrow you will be getting an episode of Picture This, a show that I do with Chad Webb where we go through every single Best Picture nominee ever. We are doing the Best Picture nominees and winner of 2011. We will talk about some of the films that didn't make the cut that we think should have, discussing all 9 of the Best Picture nominees at full length, and then picking our choices for the best film, actor, and actress of those 9 films. It is going to be a lot of fun, and I cannot wait for you to see it. Thank you so much.